no. Step away from the register. Now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be.
I've worked here for 6 years. What is going on?
Are you a U.S. citizen? Answer me.
Yes, I am. I'm from Minnesota. I was born in Minneapolis. Why are you yelling at me?
Then you'll prove it right now. Come with us.
The fluorescent lights of Riverside Market cast everything in stark clarity that Wednesday afternoon. Security cameras captured every angle of what was about to unfold at Register 7, where 29-year-old Lakeisha Monroe was about to be detained by federal agents in front of her co-workers, her customers, and the watchful eyes of a surveillance system that would later become the key evidence in an $8 million lawsuit. Where are you watching from? Seriously, drop your location in the comments. I want to know who's seeing this story. And listen, if you're new here, hit subscribe right now. What I'm about to tell you is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about employment raids and racial profiling. You don't want to miss how this ends. Lakeisha Monroe had been working at Riverside Market since she was 23 years old. It was a large regional grocery chain, the kind with wide aisles and weekly sales flyers, serving a diverse urban neighborhood in Milwaukee. She'd started as a bagger, worked her way up to cashier, then to senior cashier, then to front-end supervisor candidate. She was good at her job. Reliable. Friendly. Customers knew her by name. She'd grown up in Minneapolis, in a middle-class neighborhood where her mother was a school nurse and her father was a union electrician. She'd gone to public schools, played volleyball in high school, graduated with decent grades but no scholarship money for college. Instead of going into debt, she'd moved to Milwaukee where her aunt lived, found work at Riverside Market and built a life. She had her own apartment. She had a boyfriend who worked in IT. She had a savings account and a retirement fund through her employer. She paid taxes. She voted. She was, in every legal and practical sense, an ordinary American going about her ordinary life. That Wednesday in August started like any other shift. Lakeisha clocked in at 1 p.m. for the afternoon rush. The store was busy, midweek grocery shopping, seniors taking advantage of discount day, parents stocking up before school started. She took her position at Register 7, one of the express lanes, and settled into the familiar rhythm of scanning items, making small talk, bagging efficiently. At 3:17 p.m., everything changed. 2 agents in tactical vests marked with IC in large letters walked through the automatic doors. They weren't shopping. They moved with purpose, scanning the checkout area, their eyes systematically assessing each register station. Immigration and Customs Enforcement had arrived at Riverside Market, and they had a target in mind. They walked directly to Register 7. Lakeisha was helping an elderly woman who was paying for her groceries with carefully counted cash, apologizing for the delay. Lakeisha smiled and assured her there was no rush. That's when the first agent stepped up to the side of her register station. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step away from the register." Lakeisha looked up, startled. The elderly customer looked confused. The line of 5 people behind her grew quiet. "I'm sorry, what?" Lakeisha said, her hands frozen over the cash drawer. "I'm in the middle of ringing up a customer." "Step away from the register. Now." The agent's tone was flat, authoritative, allowing no discussion. "We need to speak with you about your employment authorization." Lakeisha felt her face flush. Every eye in the checkout area was suddenly on her. 3 other cashiers at nearby registers had stopped scanning to stare. Customers were pulling out phones. "My employment, what?" She could hear the tremor in her own voice. "I work here. I've worked here for 6 years. What is this about?" The second agent had positioned himself on the other side of the register, effectively boxing her in. "Are you a U.S. citizen?" The question landed like a slap. Lakeisha felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. She knew exactly what was happening. She'd seen the news reports. She'd heard stories from friends. But she'd never imagined it would happen to her. "Yes." The word came out too loud, defensive. Yes, I'm from Minnesota. I was born in Minneapolis. Why are you asking me this in front of customers? We'll need to see documentation proving your citizenship and legal right to work. Come with us." The elderly woman Lakeisha had been helping spoke up, her voice shaking. "Young man, this girl has helped me every week for years. She works here. Leave her alone." The agent didn't even glance at her. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please complete your transaction at another register." "I'm not leaving until you explain what you're doing to her." More customers were gathering. The line at Register 7 had abandoned their carts, some filming on their phones, others just watching with expressions ranging from shock to discomfort to anger. Lakeisha's manager, Alan Patterson, came rushing over from the customer service desk. He was a middle-aged white man who'd been managing this store for 12 years. He knew every employee's name, their schedules, their kids' birthdays. What's going on here? Alan demanded, his voice carrying across the checkout area. Are you the manager? The first agent asked. Yes. I'm Alan Patterson. I manage this store. What's this about? We're investigating employment eligibility. We need to verify that all your employees are legally authorized to work. You're doing this in the middle of the store? During business hours? In front of customers? Alan's face was turning red. If you have questions about employment authorization, you go through corporate HR. You don't interrogate employees on the floor. Sir, we're conducting a lawful investigation. You can cooperate or face charges of harboring undocumented workers. Harboring? Lakeisha has worked here for 6 years. She's a documented employee. We have all her paperwork on file. I-9, tax forms, direct deposit information. Everything went through proper channels when she was hired. The agent turned his attention back to Lakeisha. Ma'am, do you have identification on you right now? Lakeisha's purse was in her employee locker, in the break room at the back of the store. My wallet is in my locker. I can get it? Stay where you are. What form of identification do you have? My driver's license. My employee ID. I have a social security card at home. Birth certificate. I have everything. I'm from Minnesota. We'll need to verify that. You'll need to come with us to answer additional questions. Alan stepped between Lakeisha and the agents. No, absolutely not. You want to verify employment, you go through the proper channels. You contact our corporate office. You submit formal requests. You don't detain employees during their shift. Step aside, sir. This is federal business. I don't care whose business it is. You're harassing my employee. Have you ever watched someone's rights get violated right in front of you and felt powerless to stop it? Drop a comment, because what these cameras captured next would become Exhibit A in proving federal overreach. The store's security system was extensive. Riverside Market had cameras everywhere, at every register, covering every aisle, monitoring entrances and exits, watching the parking lot. The system recorded continuously in high definition, storing footage for 90 days before overriding. What those cameras captured over the next 23 minutes would become the cornerstone of a lawsuit that would change federal enforcement protocols. The footage showed the agents refusing Alan's request to go through proper channels. It showed them demanding that Lakeisha leave her register immediately. It showed Alan calling corporate security on his cell phone, speaking urgently about a situation in progress. It showed Lakeisha standing behind her register, visibly trembling, as a crowd of approximately 30 customers and employees gathered in a semicircle around Register 7. Many had their phones out, recording from different angles, but the store's security cameras provided the clearest, most comprehensive view. The audio was perfect. Every word captured. Ma'am, for the last time, you need to come with us voluntarily or we will place you in custody. In custody for what? Lakeisha's voice broke. I haven't done anything wrong. I was born in Minneapolis. My mom is Sandra Monroe. She's a nurse at Roosevelt Elementary. My dad is Curtis Monroe. He works for the electrical union. I grew up on Lyndale Avenue. I went to South High School. What do you want me to say? We need official documentation, not stories. Stories? My life is a story to you? One of the customers filming stepped closer. Excuse me, agents, but I'm a lawyer. What's your probable cause for detaining this woman? The second agent, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. We're conducting a worksite enforcement operation. We have the right to verify employment eligibility. Worksite enforcement requires advance notice to the employer and proper protocols. You can't just walk into a store and start interrogating random employees. What specific information do you have suggesting this woman is unauthorized to work? That's confidential. Confidential? The lawyer pulled out a business card and handed it to Lakeisha. Ma'am, don't answer any more questions without representation present. These agents are violating proper procedure. The first agent's expression hardened. Sir, you're interfering with a federal investigation. Step back. I'm witnessing a potential civil rights violation. I'm staying right here. The confrontation was escalating. Alan had gotten corporate security on the line, and they were conferring with their legal team. Other employees were recording on their phones. The elderly woman who'd been at Lakeisha's register was calling local news stations. And through it all, Lakeisha stood behind Register 7, her hands gripping the counter, trying to understand how going to work had turned into this nightmare. We're taking you into custody, the first agent said finally. You'll be transported to a federal facility where your citizenship and employment authorization can be properly verified. You can't do that. Alan practically shouted. She's a U.S. citizen. She has rights. She has the right to prove her status. Until then, she's being detained as part of an employment verification investigation. The agent reached for Lakeisha's arm. She instinctively pulled back, not aggressively, just a reflexive flinch from a stranger grabbing her. Don't touch me. Her voice was high with panic now. I didn't do anything. Someone call the police. Call someone. We are federal agents. We have authority here. Ma'am, listen to me. It was the lawyer customer again, speaking quickly. You don't have to go with them without a warrant. They're bluffing about their authority. Stand your ground. But Lakeisha wasn't a lawyer. She was a grocery store cashier who'd been taught to respect authority, to comply with police, to not make waves. And she was terrified. I'll go, she said quietly. I'll go. Just, please don't handcuff me. Please don't do that in front of everyone. That's your right to refuse, the lawyer started. I don't want to make this worse. Lakeisha's eyes were filled with tears. I just want this to be over. I'll go prove I'm a citizen and then I'll come back. Right? That's how this works. The agent nodded. If your documentation checks out, you'll be released. It was a lie. Or at least it was misleading enough to constitute a lie. Lakeisha was taken from the store without handcuffs, but flanked by both agents like a criminal. Alan followed them to the parking lot, still on the phone with corporate, still arguing. Customers poured out after them, filming everything. The agents put Lakeisha in the back of an unmarked sedan. Through the window, she could see Alan gesturing frantically, other employees crying, customers shaking their heads in disbelief. The car pulled away. And Lakeisha Monroe, born in Minneapolis, educated in American public schools, employed and tax-paying and utterly innocent, was taken into federal custody. The detention facility was 40 minutes away. Lakeisha was processed like anyone accused of being in the country illegally, fingerprinted, photographed, her belongings inventoried. Her cell phone was taken. Her employee ID badge was noted but dismissed as insufficient proof of citizenship. I need to call someone, Lakeisha said. My manager knows I'm a citizen. My family can bring documents. You'll be allowed a call once processing is complete. Processing took 6 hours. By the time Lakeisha was finally allowed to use a phone, it was after 10 p.m. She called her mother in Minneapolis. Sandra Monroe answered on the first ring. Kisha? Honey, where are you? Your manager called hours ago saying you'd been taken by federal agents. What's happening? Lakeisha broke down. Through tears, she explained everything. The agents at her register, the detention, the accusations that she wasn't authorized to work despite being born in Minnesota. Where are you? What facility? I don't know. Somewhere outside Milwaukee. Mom, they think I'm not a citizen. They won't listen. Baby, listen to me. You were born at Hennepin County Medical Center. I have your birth certificate. Your father and I are getting in the car right now. We'll bring everything, birth certificate, social security card, school records, everything. You hold on, baby. We're coming. But it wasn't that simple. The facility wouldn't allow family members to simply walk in with documents. Everything had to go through official channels, verification requests submitted to state vital statistics offices, database checks that took time, bureaucratic processes that moved at glacial speeds while real people sat in detention. Back in Milwaukee, the story was exploding. The security footage from Riverside Market had been obtained by local news. Corporate had released it immediately, knowing it would prove their employee had done nothing wrong. The footage aired on the 10 p.m. news, showing federal agents confronting a cashier during her shift, ignoring the manager's protests, detaining a young black woman despite her explanations that she was a U.S. citizen. The lawyer who tried to intervene, his name was Marcus Chin and he specialized in employment discrimination, gave an interview. What we witnessed today was racial profiling disguised as worksite enforcement. Those agents had no probable cause to single out that young woman. They saw a black woman and assumed she might be undocumented. That's not law enforcement. That's prejudice with a badge. Social media erupted. Hashtag Justice for Lakeisha started trending. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The Grocery Workers Union condemned the detention. And the video footage, clear, comprehensive, showing a frightened young woman being intimidated in her workplace, was shared hundreds of thousands of times. Meanwhile, Lakeisha spent the night in a detention cell. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. She kept replaying the scene at her register, trying to understand what she could have done differently, what she could have said to make them believe her. Her cellmate was a woman from Honduras who'd been in detention for 7 months awaiting deportation proceedings. She spoke limited English, but they communicated enough for Lakeisha to understand. This system wasn't designed for quick resolutions. It was designed to hold people indefinitely while paperwork crawled through bureaucracy. Thursday morning came. Lakeisha's parents had driven through the night from Minneapolis, arriving at the facility at 6 a.m. with a folder full of documents: birth certificate, social security card, high school diploma, even Lakeisha's vaccination records from childhood. They weren't allowed to see her. They were told to submit the documents to processing and wait for verification. Verification. Curtis Monroe's voice thundered through the waiting area. My daughter was born in Minnesota. Here's her birth certificate with the official state seal. What else do you need to verify? Sir, all documents must be authenticated through proper channels. Proper channels? She's been here since yesterday afternoon. You've got her on some kind of hold for being unauthorized when she was born in this country. This is unlawful detention. Security was called. Curtis and Sandra were escorted out, still clutching their daughter's documents, still demanding to see her. They went directly to Marcus Chen's law office. He'd left his business card with Lakeisha before she was taken, and Sandra had Googled him overnight. He agreed to take the case immediately. This is exactly the kind of overreach we've been warning about, Marcus said, reviewing their documents. Your daughter is a U.S. citizen. She has committed no crime. And she's being held in federal detention based solely on the suspicion of agents who provided no probable cause for their initial approach. He filed an emergency writ of habeas corpus Thursday afternoon, demanding Lakeisha's immediate release and arguing that her detention violated her constitutional rights as a citizen. The filing included affidavits from Alan Patterson describing Lakeisha's 6-year employment history, from co-workers attesting to her character, from customers who'd witnessed the detention. It included stills from the security footage showing the entire confrontation: Lakeisha at her register, the agents approaching without explanation, the crowd of witnesses, her removal from the store. And it included her birth certificate, social security card, and multiple forms of identification proving beyond any doubt that she was exactly who she said she was. The federal judge who reviewed the writ was not amused. Judge Catherine Erickson had been on the bench for 18 years and had seen plenty of immigration enforcement cases. But this one stood out. The petitioner was born in Minneapolis, she noted during the emergency hearing Friday morning. She has a valid U.S. birth certificate. She has been employed at the same establishment for 6 years. She has no criminal record. She was detained from her workplace without warrant, without probable cause, and without any articulable suspicion beyond the agent's subjective assessment. On what grounds is she still in custody? The government attorney struggled to answer. Your Honor, the agents were conducting routine worksite enforcement. Routine? I've reviewed the surveillance footage. Those agents walked directly to one specific cashier out of 15 employees working that shift. They demanded citizenship papers in front of customers. They ignored the store manager's attempts to provide employment records. They detained a U.S. citizen for, Judge Erickson checked her notes, 41 hours and counting. What part of that is routine? Should federal agents need actual evidence before detaining citizens at their workplace? Let me know what you think in the comments, because this judge was about to set a precedent that would change enforcement protocols nationwide. Judge Erickson ordered Lakeisha's immediate release. Not in 24 hours. Not pending further review. Immediate. The petitioner is a United States citizen detained without cause. Her continued detention is unlawful. She is to be released within 2 hours of this order, with all personal belongings returned, and with transportation provided back to Milwaukee at government expense. Lakeisha walked out of the detention facility at 1:30 p.m. on Friday, 50 hours after being taken from Register 7 at Riverside Market. Her parents were waiting, along with Marcus Chen, a crowd of supporters who'd driven from Milwaukee, and multiple news cameras. She looked exhausted, traumatized. Her braids were disheveled from 2 nights of fitful sleep on a detention center cot. She was still wearing her work uniform, the Riverside Market polo shirt and khaki pants she'd put on Wednesday morning. Sandra wrapped her daughter in her arms and didn't let go for a full minute. Curtis stood behind them, his hand on Lakeisha's shoulder, his jaw clenched against the anger and relief warring in his expression. Marcus stepped to the microphones. Lakeisha Monroe is a United States citizen who was unlawfully detained from her workplace, held in federal custody for 50 hours, and denied her basic rights. We are filing a lawsuit to ensure this never happens to anyone else. The lawsuit, filed 2 months later, was strategic and comprehensive. It named the 2 ICE agents individually, their supervisors, the regional ICE director, and the Department of Homeland Security. It alleged violations of Fourth Amendment rights, unlawful seizure without probable cause, Fifth Amendment rights, deprivation of liberty without due process, and 14th Amendment rights, racial discrimination in enforcement. The complaint detailed Lakeisha's background, her employment history, her citizenship, and her complete lack of any characteristic that should have drawn federal attention. It described the detention, approached at her workplace without justification, questioned about her citizenship in front of colleagues and customers, detained despite offering to provide documentation, held for 50 hours despite readily available proof of citizenship. It included the security footage, 23 minutes of high-definition video showing the entire confrontation from multiple angles. The footage was devastating. It showed peaceful workplace suddenly disrupted, a frightened employee being interrogated, customers trying to intervene, and agents refusing to follow proper protocol. It included expert testimony about the psychological impact of wrongful detention. Lakeisha had developed anxiety, had difficulty returning to work, experienced panic attacks when she saw anyone in a suit who looked official. She'd had to enter therapy to process the trauma of being treated like a criminal in front of people she saw every day. And it included statistical analysis of ICE enforcement patterns showing that worksite raids disproportionately targeted workplaces with high percentages of black and brown employees, that individual detentions during such raids overwhelmingly involved people of color, and that in jurisdictions like Milwaukee, citizens of color were questioned about their status at rates far exceeding demographic representation. The lawsuit sought $8.4 million in damages, $1.9 million in compensatory damages for the detention, lost wages, emotional trauma, and ongoing psychological treatment, $6.5 million in punitive damages to send a message about the cost of racial profiling and constitutional violations. Discovery was brutal for the government's case. The agent's own records showed they'd visited Riverside Market specifically because an anonymous tip had claimed the store employed illegal workers. The tip provided no names, no specific allegations, no credible information, just a vague claim that became justification for a raid. When pressed about why they'd approached Lakeisha specifically out of 15 employees working that afternoon, the agents couldn't provide a coherent answer. She fit a general description we were looking for. What description? The tipster mentioned young female employees. There were 7 young female employees working that afternoon, visible on the security footage. Why did you approach only Ms. Monroe? Silence. Was it because Ms. Monroe is black? Race had nothing to do with our decision. Then what criteria did you use to single her out? More silence. The pattern was undeniable. Every answer, every document, every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. The agents had seen a black woman working as a cashier and decided she looked like someone who might be undocumented. They'd acted on that assumption without probable cause, without evidence, without anything beyond racial profiling. Expert witnesses testified about the Fourth Amendment requirements for detentions. Citizens cannot be stopped and questioned about their status without specific, articulable suspicion of illegal activity. Working while black is not suspicious activity. Being a cashier while black is not probable cause. Constitutional scholars testified that the detention violated clearly established law. The 50-hour hold without charge, without access to counsel, without proper verification despite available documentation, all of it constituted deprivation of liberty without due process. Employment law experts testified about the chilling effect such raids have on workplaces. After Lakeisha's detention, Riverside Market reported that 3 employees quit immediately, too frightened to continue working there. Multiple employees of color requested transfers to back-of-house positions where they'd be less visible. And customer complaints flooded in from people who'd witnessed the detention and didn't feel safe shopping there anymore. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury watched the security footage repeatedly, Lakeisha at her register helping the elderly woman, the agents approaching without explanation, her increasingly desperate explanations that she was a citizen, her tears when they insisted she come with them. They heard Lakeisha testify about the experience. About the humiliation of being questioned in front of customers she'd served for years. About the fear of being handcuffed in her workplace. About the 50 hours in detention wondering if anyone would believe she was telling the truth. About the panic attacks she now experienced at work, the therapy she required, the way she flinched whenever someone in a suit entered the store. I was born in Minneapolis, Lakeisha said from the witness stand, her voice steady but her hands trembling. I've lived in this country my entire life. I've never broken a law. I've worked hard, paid my taxes, done everything right. And I got treated like a criminal because 2 agents looked at me and decided I looked illegal. That's not justice. That's racism. The agents testified in their own defense, but their explanations crumbled under cross-examination. They couldn't explain their probable cause. They couldn't justify bypassing the store's management and corporate HR. They couldn't account for why verification of citizenship took 50 hours when Lakeisha's birth certificate was available within 12 hours of her detention. Their supervisor testified that the agents had followed standard protocols for worksite enforcement. But when presented with the actual ICE protocols, which required coordination with employers, specific targeting based on credible information, and rapid verification of citizenship claims, it became clear those protocols had been ignored. The jury deliberated for 8 hours over 2 days. When they returned, their verdict was unanimous. Liable for unlawful seizure and detention. Liable for racial discrimination in enforcement. Liable for violation of due process rights. Liable for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Compensatory damages, $2.1 million for the detention, trauma, lost wages, and ongoing psychological treatment. Punitive damages, $6.3 million to punish the violation and deter future misconduct. Total, $8.4 million. The verdict made national headlines. Grocery cashier wins $8.4 million after wrongful detention by federal agents. Worksite raid gone wrong costs government millions. Jury awards historic damages for racial profiling in employment enforcement. The 2 agents were terminated. Their supervisor was demoted. The regional ICE director faced an internal review that resulted in reassignment. And DHS implemented new protocols requiring documented probable cause before any worksite detention, mandatory verification of citizenship within 12 hours for anyone claiming U.S. citizenship, and supervisor approval for any detention lasting longer than 6 hours. The reforms wouldn't fix everything, but they represented accountability that might make future agents think twice. Lakeisha used part of the settlement to pay off her student loans from the community college classes she'd been taking at night. She bought her parents a new car to replace the aging sedan they'd driven through the night to bring her birth certificate. She donated to organizations that help detained immigrants who don't have her resources or her citizenship status. And she went back to work at Riverside Market. It took her 4 months to feel ready. Her therapist had encouraged her to take more time, but Lakeisha was determined. They don't get to take my job from me, she said. They don't get to make me afraid of the place I've worked for 6 years. She returned to Register 7. The same station where she'd been confronted. Alan had offered to place her anywhere else in the store, customer service, back office, anywhere she'd feel comfortable. But Lakeisha chose Register 7. Her first day back, customers lined up specifically at her register. Some brought flowers. Others brought cards. Many just wanted to tell her they'd been following her case, they'd been outraged by what happened, they were glad she was back. The elderly woman who'd been at her register that Wednesday afternoon came through with a small gift, a framed photo of Lakeisha that had been captured in one of the news reports with a note. You stood up for all of us. Thank you for your courage. Lakeisha still works at Riverside Market. She was promoted to front-end supervisor, then to assistant store manager. She's become an advocate for workers' rights, speaking at union events and community forums about her experience. She works with immigrant rights organizations, understanding that her citizenship status gave her protections that others don't have. The security footage from that Wednesday afternoon is still available online, used in training for civil rights organizations, played in law school classes about Fourth Amendment protections. It stands as evidence of what happens when enforcement becomes harassment, when assumptions override evidence, when someone's appearance becomes grounds for detention. 3 years after the incident, Lakeisha was invited to speak at a conference on immigration enforcement reform. She told her story to a room full of advocates, attorneys, and policy makers. I was lucky, she concluded. I had my birth certificate. I had parents who could drive through the night to help me. I had a lawyer who took my case. I had a judge who recognized the violation. But most people don't have all that. Most people who get detained don't have the resources to fight back. My case made headlines because I'm a citizen and the violation was so clear. But every day people who look like me get questioned, detained, treated like they don't belong. And we need to change that. The conference room erupted in applause, but Lakeisha wasn't done. Those agents looked at me at my register and decided I looked illegal. Not because I was doing anything wrong. Not because they had evidence. But because in their minds, black women working minimum wage jobs must be immigrants. That assumption cost them $8 million. But more importantly, it cost me my sense of safety. It cost me the belief that working hard and following rules would protect me. It taught me that being born here isn't always enough if you don't look the way people think Americans should look. She paused, gathering herself. So I'm asking you, all of you working on these issues, to remember that behind every case, every statistic, every enforcement action, there are real people. People like me who just want to go to work, do their jobs, and come home safely. People who deserve to be treated like the citizens they are. People whose rights matter as much as anyone else's. What would you do if you were questioned about your citizenship while simply doing your job? How would you prove you belong in the country where you were born? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you think about enforcement and profiling in a new way, hit that subscribe button. These stories need to be told. They need to be heard. And they need to spark real change. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.